Camilla knew better than to fall for a man like Bill. The red flags were clear from the start. Glances that lingered too long, meetings that felt stolen, and a magnetic charm she should have resisted. But something in his gaze had pulled her in like a spark catching dry kindling, igniting a part of her she hadn't felt in years. And now, every time she saw him, her heart raced with a reckless thrill she couldn't ignore. Their connection had started innocently enough. Friendly encounters between neighbors, quick conversations that turned into late-night coffees. But with each meeting, each touch, her resistance wore thin. And before she knew it, she was entangled in a web of stolen glances, whispered secrets, and a longing that only grew sharper with every forbidden moment. What started as fleeting meetups turned into something more frequent and undeniable, pulling both of them deeper into a web of passion. Yet, just as Camilla's feelings intensified, she uncovered that Bill had other women in his life. Oddly enough, this revelation didn't drive her away. Instead, it twisted her emotions in ways she barely understood. Camilla had always seen herself as independent, able to walk away from anything that felt too complicated. But with Bill, that logic evaporated. She felt a sharp pang of jealousy each time she imagined him with someone else. Yet beneath it lay a strange thrill, an intense, almost masochistic desire to be the one he returned to, no matter who else was in his life. She knew it wasn't healthy, but somehow the competition made her feel alive, seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. Her mind drifted back to her last relationship, which had ended in a slow fade, slipping into quiet indifference until there was nothing left. She'd promised herself she'd never settle for lukewarm affection again, and maybe, on some level, that's why she clung to Bill. The intensity, the thrill, even the jealousy, it all felt real, like proof that she could feel deeply. And so, even as she sensed the risks, she found herself wanting him more with each stolen glance and whispered promise, her need blurring the lines of what she could accept. Their bond simmered with an emotional tension, tinged by a mix of jealousy, fascination, and undeniable attraction that only grew more intense with every interaction. Before Bill entered her life, Camilla had lived a quiet, almost predictable life in a cozy apartment on the 4th floor of a historic city building. At 27, her routine was simple: work, an occasional Pilates session, light meals, and sometimes an evening of reading or binge-watching a show. Socially, her circle was limited to a few friends, and since her last relationship had ended over 2 years prior, she'd grown accustomed to the solitude. Rarely did her days stray from the ordinary. Then, one afternoon, as Camilla was brewing coffee, an unusual sound from the hallway caught her attention. Curious, she peered through a small gap in her door and spotted a man struggling with several heavy boxes. Clearly, he was moving in next door. He was tall, with tousled brown hair and a rugged, unshaven beard, his face a blend of determination and effort. Without thinking, she opened her door wider and called out, "Need a hand?" He turned, visibly relieved, and smiled. "I'd really appreciate it. I'm Bill, just moving in." Camilla picked up one of the lighter boxes and followed him into his apartment. Inside, the space was still cluttered, boxes and furniture scattered everywhere. Yet she noticed his taste, modern, refined, each piece carefully chosen, giving a glimpse of his style. "I'm Camilla," she introduced herself, nodding towards her own apartment door. As they unpacked, conversation flowed easily. Bill shared that he'd recently moved to the city for a unique job opportunity, his voice animated as he spoke about his new projects. Camilla felt drawn to his energy, the way he seemed so full of life and enthusiasm. After a while, she suggested with a warm smile, "How about some coffee? We deserve a little break." He chuckled, glancing at the mess around them. "Coffee sounds perfect, but I don't think I'll find a way to make it here just yet." Camilla grinned. "Then how about my place? The coffee's just brewed." They moved to her apartment, where they continued talking over cups of fresh coffee. The connection was undeniable, an easy, magnetic pull between them that neither could ignore. As they chatted, time seemed to melt away, and before they realized it, evening had turned to night. When it was finally time for Bill to head back, He looked at her with sincere appreciation. "Thank you, Camilla. You've made this whole moving day feel like a breeze." She smiled, warmth in her eyes. "My pleasure. And if you need anything, I'm just next door." In the days that followed, what began as a friendly gesture between neighbors grew into a deepening friendship. They found themselves crossing paths more often, the proximity of their apartments giving way to spontaneous encounters that only added fuel to their growing attraction. Camilla and Bill both knew that their connection was more than friendship. There was an undeniable pull between them that neither could ignore. Camilla's heart, which had been quiet and steady for so long, now beat faster every time Bill was near. Their bond strengthened quickly, and soon, they became nearly inseparable. It was as if he sensed when she was thinking of him, always appearing at her door at the perfect moment, and she secretly found herself counting down to each knock. One Friday night, after a draining week at work, Bill suggested something more laid back. "How about we order a pizza and watch a movie? We both need a little break," he said with that familiar, charming smile. Camilla accepted eagerly, unable to resist the warmth in his gaze. Not long after, Bill arrived with a pizza box in one hand and a small stack of movies in the other. They settled in on the couch, the pizza on the coffee table between them as Bill flipped through the movie options. "What kind of movie do you feel like?" he asked. Camilla smirked playfully. "Surprise me." Bill put on a romantic film, thinking it would be lighthearted. But soon, they realized it was much more intense than they'd expected. With each scene, Camilla could feel the heat building inside her, and every glance exchanged with Bill only intensified the tension. By the time a particularly passionate scene played on the screen, Bill's restraint was worn thin. He turned to her, his eyes filled with raw desire, and kissed her, letting his emotions take control. The kiss was tentative at first, but quickly deepened, becoming a hungry, urgent exchange that neither of them could resist. Camilla melted into him, her hands roaming over his back, exploring him eagerly as their passion grew. As they finally pulled back just slightly to catch their breath, they locked eyes, each filled with longing and desire. Without words, Bill's hand found her waist, pulling her in close, the firmness of his grip igniting a shiver of excitement in her. The intensity of the moment lingered, slow and deliberate, as they surrendered fully to the passion overtaking them. Bill's hands wandered, exploring every curve with a careful yet eager touch. He kissed down her shoulders, tracing a line to her neck as Camilla let out a soft sigh of pleasure, surprised at the feelings surging through her. His lips found hers again, this time with even more intensity, their bodies drawn together by an irresistible force. She helped him slide off his shirt, her fingers tracing along his warm, toned skin, her touch lingering over each line and muscle. In return, Bill guided her gently onto the sofa, his hands moving to her thighs as he kissed her deeply, with a fierce, almost primal passion. Every touch, every caress sent waves of electricity through Camilla, making her pulse race with desire. She arched her back, drawing him closer, craving the connection between them. They moved in harmony, their breaths quickening, filling the room with soft gasps and whispered names. Bill combined gentleness with intensity, every touch seeming to anticipate her needs, driving her deeper into a world of pure sensation. He whispered to her softly, his words of admiration only intensifying her excitement. They moved as one, a perfect blend of rhythm and intensity, both completely wrapped up in each other as the night continued, their connection unbroken, each moment only fueling the next. Camilla and Bill lost themselves in each other completely, the rest of the world fading as they surrendered to the passion that consumed them. When they finally paused, breathless and satisfied, they shared a look of pure complicity. Their smiles were full of understanding and contentment. "I've never felt anything like this before," Camilla whispered, her voice soft and trembling. "Neither have I," Bill replied, brushing her hair aside before placing a tender kiss on her forehead. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, he added, "And we'll do this again soon." Camilla couldn't help but smile, feeling an intense connection with him, deeper than anything she'd known. She knew, right then, that this first encounter had irrevocably changed them both. From that day on, Camilla found herself watching the clock, pulse quickening each time she heard the faintest sound from his apartment. Their first encounter left her buzzing with anticipation and unease. She could still feel the warmth of his touch lingering on her skin, yet a small voice in her mind warned her to be careful. But Bill had a way of erasing her hesitations. He'd show up at her door with that familiar grin and a casual, "thought you could use some company," as if he hadn't been on her mind every minute since they last met. Soon, she noticed his subtle invitations, a light hand on her back, a lingering gaze, a comment just close enough to hint but not confirm. She started counting down to each knock at her door, relishing in the moments he'd brush her hand or the way his voice would lower as he leaned in to speak. Every touch, every look built their connection brick by brick until their meetings felt less like chance and more like a ritual, one they were both eager to keep. Before long, Bill had taken to slipping by in the middle of the day, their moments together becoming a rhythm she craved. She would wait, pretending she wasn't watching the clock, yet feeling her heart beat faster as his usual hour drew closer. Their secret meetings became the pulse of her day, something she both anticipated and feared, each rendezvous adding to the fire between them. Their desire seemed limitless. Each week, Bill would find ways to come home midday, a break that often turned into stolen moments together. One day, Camilla decided to surprise him. She slipped into a tempting set of lingerie, throwing a light dress over it, and made her way to his apartment just as she heard his door unlock. When Bill opened the door, he looked at her knowingly, already anticipating what was about to unfold. Without needing words, he pulled her close, his hands tracing down her back as he kissed her deeply. Within minutes, their clothes lay scattered across the living room floor, and Bill gently laid her onto the couch, his touch filled with urgency that sent shivers down her spine. His hands found her thighs, gripping her tightly as he skillfully teased her, his fingers and tongue working with expert precision, each movement drawing out intense pleasure. As Bill's hands traveled up her body, slowly revealing her bare skin to him, he turned her around, his hands firm on her hips, guiding her back toward him. She could feel the heat radiating between them, her body responding instinctively to his every touch. In a husky voice, he murmured, "You drive me crazy," before positioning himself behind her, his movements full of raw, unrestrained need. As they connected, waves of pleasure washed over her, their bodies locked in a rhythm that felt like pure harmony. Bill's hands held her firmly, his grip grounding her as they moved in perfect sync. Every motion, every gasp was like a silent dialogue between them, an unspoken language that deepened their bond. With each movement, he guided her closer to the edge, until finally they reached the peak together, both breathless and completely spent. Their encounter soon became a regular escape, a private ritual that kept the flame between them blazing. Each meeting left them feeling invigorated, their secret rendezvous the highlight of their days. Yet, as time went on, Camilla noticed a new pattern. Some nights, faint but unmistakable sounds drifted from Bill's apartment, soft moans and whispers that hinted at intimate moments shared with someone else. A pang of jealousy hit her the first time she heard it, but it quickly morphed into something else, a fierce, undeniable longing to be with him again, to claim him as her own. She knew Bill was seeing another woman, but somehow this only fueled her desire for him, intensifying her need to feel his closeness. One evening, her patience wore thin, and the pull toward him was too strong to ignore. Camilla tried to focus on her book, but the muffled sounds drifting through the walls from Bill's apartment made it impossible. Each soft moan, every quiet murmur from the other side, stirred something deep inside her, amplifying her desire until the silence that followed hinted the other woman had left. That was it. Camilla couldn't resist any longer. Driven by a mix of longing and urgency, she rose, crossed the hall, and knocked on Bill's door. When he opened it, he was still catching his breath, a hint of a smile on his lips. Without a word, she slipped inside, shutting the door firmly behind her. "I heard everything," she murmured, her voice low but charged with desire. "Now it's my turn. I want to feel what she did." Bill's eyes widened in surprise, but the spark of excitement was unmistakable. He pulled her close, kissing her with an intense, smoldering passion as his hands traced her body, making her feel desired from the very first touch. Soon, they found themselves in his bedroom, the bed still warm and disheveled. But this time, Bill's attention was fully on Camilla. He explored her skin, tracing every curve with his fingers and lips, his touch igniting sparks of pleasure that made her grip the sheets tightly. Her body arched with anticipation, and she whispered, "More, don't hold back." He responded by intensifying his movements, each touch and kiss sending waves of pleasure through her. As their bodies moved in unison, Camilla felt completely enveloped in sensation, losing herself in each kiss and caress. Her cries and sighs filled the room, a testament to the overwhelming connection between them. When they finally reached the peak together, they lay side by side, breathless and entwined, both of them flushed and satisfied. With a soft smile, she looked at him, her voice still catching from the intensity of it all. "You're incredible." "You too," he replied, pulling her close and pressing a gentle kiss on her forehead. "I'll always be this way with you." As Camilla rested in Bill's arms, she let her fingers trace gentle patterns across his skin, feeling the quiet rhythm of his breathing. But the contentment she felt was tinged with something else, a low hum of doubt she couldn't quite shake. She knew she'd feel this ache again, the pang of jealousy that surfaced every time she imagined him with someone else. Tonight, her need to be close to him had overridden everything else. But what about tomorrow? What about when she would once again hear those faint whispers through the wall, reminding her of what they could never be? Each shared moment with him felt exhilarating, almost intoxicating. But as she lay there, her mind whispered questions she wasn't ready to answer. How long could she keep this up, waiting for him to choose her? Or was she, in some way, choosing this half-love because it kept her from facing something deeper about herself? Her chest tightened, yet she found herself holding on, fingers clutching his hand as if afraid to let go. In the quiet of his apartment, Camilla realized that, for now, the thought of leaving hurt more than the jealousy or uncertainty ever could. This connection with him was unlike anything she'd known, and even with its cost, it was a risk she wasn't ready to let go of. Not yet. What do you think? If you were in Camilla's shoes, would you continue a relationship that brings so much passion but also a fair share of pain? Is it worth holding on to something that feels intoxicating yet also threatens your sense of self? Or does this kind of love ultimately weaken the bond rather than strengthening it? Share your thoughts below, and if you're curious about what's next for Camilla, subscribe for future chapters. You may just see her journey take a turn inspired by your own insights. In relationships like Camilla and Bill's, it's easy to get caught up in the intensity, that rush of emotions that feels both exhilarating and consuming. Many people find themselves in similar situations, pulled into connections that are as thrilling as they are uncertain. The constant highs and lows can mimic the feeling of true love, but in reality, they often leave us more vulnerable, testing our self-worth and boundaries. It's natural to crave a deep connection, yet when a relationship requires constant compromise of our values, it can lead to more harm than good. Psychology tells us that true intimacy is not built on competition, uncertainty, or secrecy. Real closeness emerges from a foundation of mutual respect and commitment, a connection where each partner feels secure, valued, and respected. When we feel secure in our relationships, we're free to express our true selves without the fear of losing our partner's attention or affection to someone else. It's a bond where neither partner is willing to share the other, because both know that true love requires not just passion, but stability, respect, and trust. Camilla's situation raises the question: where do we draw the line between intense passion and genuine intimacy? It's easy to mistake jealousy for love and competition for closeness, but this often leads to cycles of emotional highs and lows that leave us feeling less secure in the long run. A healthy relationship doesn't have to be dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes the quiet, steady bonds are the ones that ultimately bring us the most joy, growth, and fulfillment. So as we follow Camilla's journey, let's consider the idea that love can be powerful yet calm, passionate yet peaceful, deeply connected yet not possessive. Perhaps Camilla will come to realize that she deserves more than a love that keeps her guessing. She might find that letting go of relationships built on fleeting thrills and pursuing those grounded in mutual respect and devotion will bring her a deeper, more enduring happiness. What do you think? Does Camilla's experience resonate with your own? Or do you see her story taking a different turn? Share your insights below and join the discussion on what it truly means to seek love that lifts us up, respects our boundaries, and helps us become our best selves.